Dream machine. .com, HL7, I18 in the snap. We're building the future, never looking back.
Welcome back to Imaging Informatics Unplugged. I'm your host, Jason Nagels, and today we're talking about something that affects everyone in imaging informatics, understanding the skills that drive our field forward and how to put them to work. Now, for years, it's been a challenge trying to identify the exact skills that are required for certain roles in imaging informatics, or it could be a big challenge if we're trying to figure out what exactly do we need to learn if we want to move to a different role. Back when we last caught up with our guests today, Don and Mohannad, they were tackling that very problem, and they were sharing a career matrix that was designed to map out skills for different imaging informatics roles. And at the time, it lived within an Excel spreadsheet, which, let's be honest, no one wants to plan their career using pivot tables and conditional formatting. So in this episode, we pick up from that conversation. We talk about how this matrix has evolved into something much more powerful, a living, interactive, web-based platform that helps us visualize our opportunities for growth, identify skills gaps, and even use AI to plan next steps. Joining me today are Don Dennison and Mohannad Hussain, two leaders who have helped bring this vision to life. Don Dennison is a consultant and fellow of the College of the Society for Imaging Informatics in Medicine, or CIIM. He's a frequent speaker and panelist at CIIM, RSNA, and other major conferences. Don serves on multiple society committees, the Journal of Digital Imaging editorial board, and contributes to the American Board of Imaging Informatics, or ABI, through its practice analysis task force and as an item writer for the CIIP exam. Mohannad Hussain is an independent consultant in imaging informatics. He serves in many technical project management roles within CIIM and RSNA. He's a software developer by training in medical imaging informatics over 15 years ago, and since then has been a passionate advocate for interoperability and open source software. Together, they're going to share the IIPcareers.com page, which is an open, community-driven platform that reimagines how we think about professional development in imaging informatics. And so whether you're looking to map out the path of your own career goals, or maybe you're a hiring manager trying to identify the right role and the right job description, this conversation will give you a practical way to think about the skills, growth, and future of imaging informatics. So with all that said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's jump into it. Okay, well, welcome back to Imaging Informatics Unplugged. And today we have two reoccurring guests, Mohannad and Don. And we left off with them about a month or so ago. We had a conversation. Brad Generow was there. And we were talking about navigating the future of imaging informatics with the career development matrix. And so Don had given the lecture at CIIM 25, part of the Dwyer lecture, and really explore the opportunity of what does it take for us to make sure that we're filling the right types of skills for the goals or the roles that we're hoping to achieve as we work on our career development. So one of the things, Mohannad, you had expressed your disdain for Excel on that podcast, I think, and maybe you can start us off. Last, we were looking into some web development opportunities. Where do things sit now?
Yeah, I believe the exact words I was using is Excel phobia. And of course, our friend Brad Generow immediately went and dug a CPT code for it, I believe, or an ICD code, I can't remember. I'm glad to know that it wasn't just to me, that it's a real thing. Now, to your question, yeah, so I worked with a local developer here in Waterloo, Ontario, and we are actually super pleased to showcase this web-based version that is going to take this to the next level. I think it's going to democratize access to this, make it a lot more friendly. As you're going to see, Don is going to show us around. It was very important for me that all the work that Don put into compiling all that information actually found its way to the audience in a very accessible manner, which is what you're going to see here. It is going to be a tool that is web-based, mobile-friendly, and most importantly, the backend is fully database, so that thought leaders like Don, other people in the industry can potentially contribute to this going forward. So we hopefully keep it up to date.
Okay, so with that said, I think you've set the table a bit. Don, did you want to say anything else, or do you want to just jump right into showing us what this looks like?
Just to thank Mohannad for all his collaboration on this, and Kadir as well. It's been incredible experience working with them to build this, and I'm excited to show everybody today what we've got. So this is the landing page. It's iipcareers.com. Again, as Mohannad said, the backbone of this is the gigantic Excel spreadsheet, which I provided in the public domain at the CIIM 2025 Dwyer lecture as part of my talk, really focusing on the human resources part of imaging informatics and the skill sets and the job and career paths. So this is what it looks like when you come to the page. The first thing I want to point out is there's information. This little arrow here indicates we can scroll down before we dive into the use of it. And this basically helps you understand the intent or what the purpose of that career tool is in terms of defining your foundation and assessing your own skills or assessing the skills of someone on your team if you're a team leader manager. And then also mapping your growth to new career potentials and skill sets required for those different roles. Also, we've got an ability, of course, to use generative AI to take the content based on your specific interests and generate things like a career development plan or skill testing questions for specific roles, and then references to things like the American Board of Imaging Informatics test content outline, which helps you understand what the Certified Imaging Informatics or Professional or CIIP exam basically covers, as well as the textbook, the Practical Imaging Informatics textbook, second edition, and references which chapters if you want to do more reading on each of those areas. A few things on the important information, the caveats. This is something I developed. I had a number of experts provide some input into it, but your organization will vary. If you're in, say, an outpatient imaging center, you'll have different jobs and descriptions than, say, a large private reading group practice or academic hospital, or if you're somebody who's working both in RIS and PACS or just PACS, that kind of thing. So you should read it but also consider not it as an absolute authoritative, but more as an input, a logical input. It is licensed under the Creative Commons, which is extremely open. It's provided as is with no warranty. Anybody can use it without any charge. It's basically owned by all of us. And there's a number of people who really helped out in the development of this, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So let's dive in and take a look at the tools. So you'll notice along the top, this is the home page. There's a few different things. We're going to start with the role skills, and then we'll go through each of those. So when we start with the role skills, you'll be presented with basically a drop-down. This is basically titles for different jobs that are common in our industry. Now, at your organization, maybe it's not called imaging analyst, maybe it's called business analyst, and maybe clinical engineering might be called biomed. So different roles and different job titles will occur. And also we have made some decisions like breaking imaging analysts into 2 tiers. At your institution, it might be 3 tiers. So you might have to adjust some of these things. But in here, the purpose of this is really to set a baseline of some of the common, again, not absolute authoritative, but some of the common skill sets required and organized into knowledge domains, of which there are 4. So let's use an example. Let's start with a very basic PACS Administrator Level 1. So as we go in here, you'll see it first loads with a description, a very basic description of what that job typically entails. And then as you scroll down, there's a legend at the top to explain how to interpret the data in below. And you'll notice here we've got the technical domain, and I'm just going to scroll down, then I'll come back. The technical domain, the clinical domain, operational, and then finally leadership and management. And within each of those, there are categories. Different roles will have different categories. So for example, if a role had no HL7 requirements, this card, as it's kind of presented here, would not appear. But if there is some expected within that role, again, this is a PACS administrator, we can click on here and you can see that they're expected to know what we've defined as level 1 knowledge of HL7. And how we've organized that content is into what you need to know. For example, the syntax and structure of version 2 messages, and it goes into more detail, as well as what you should be able to do. So communicating the required HL7 message types for interface message type for systems. And then as I mentioned below, we have some external references. So to the ABBY test content outline, which section this knowledge area applies to, and it's hierarchically organized by numbers and letters, and also the chapters in the Practical Imaging Informatics reference. So if I was interested in this role or interested in this domain, I can go to these areas to learn more. You'll notice a couple of different things. So I can expand each one of these things. So it's very nice to kind of, if you were communicating with someone who's interested in a role and you wanted to talk about it, you could open each one and click there and then kind of like allow one of them to be the focus of what you're discussing and looking at. If you wanted to copy specific content out of those areas, so for example, in say DICOM, the FSIIM is expected to know level 1 and level 2, then you could come in here and you can actually copy this content, the domain content, and then paste that into, as I'll show later, generative AI, or just for your own basic notes or into a job description template that you're going to then edit. So it makes it nice and easy. The other thing that I'm going to point out is at the top here, we have copy all content. What that does is it takes this content organized by the knowledge domain, in this case technical, and each of the knowledge areas like HL7 and DICOM, and then each of the levels below that, and further what you need to know and do. So it creates something you can just paste into Word or paste into some AI, and basically gives you all of the expectations for this specific role. So as you can see here, we've got a number of different domains. I could collapse these if I want to basically focus on one. So for example, if I'm just having a conversation about clinical, I can just focus on these here and hide those there. So again, this is really the different roles that you may be asked or you might be interested in. It ranges everything from clinical engineering to IT infrastructure, radiology, radiologists, and others. Now, as an important caveat, this obviously can't cover every possible domain or expected knowledge for a job. So obviously for a radiologist, you need to have an enormous amount of medical anatomy and other details. This particular tool is really focusing on things that are considered part of imaging informatics. It is not everything you need to know as a doctor. We're not covering that. It's outside of the scope and the intent of this. So keep that in mind as you go through this. There'll be certain roles in here that require skills outside of that. So now that we've talked a little bit about what does an individual role require, what if, let's say, I was in one role within institution. Let's say I'm an imaging analyst 1, and a posting comes up that says we're looking for an imaging analyst 2. And I'm pretty confident in my abilities, but I know that there's more that is needed to be known for a higher, more senior role. So let me take a look at and see if I can compare the two roles. So what this does is extracts out what we've defined as an imaging analyst, a baseline imaging analyst 1 needs to know, and then compares that to what an imaging analyst 2, which is essentially a superset. So if we come down here, you'll notice down here that we've organized again into the same technical domains. We've got the imaging analyst in the first column, the imaging analyst 2 in the second column. Now, it basically allows you to show what's compared. Now, you'll notice in some of these things, like DICOM, the level 1 is the same. So whether you're level imaging analyst 1 or imaging analyst 2, you only need a level 1. So this little toggle up here, show only what's different, allows you to it'll subset it so it only shows you where the level between the first role and the second role is different. So this allows you to go through. And while I'm in here interacting with it, I might look at this and say, okay, HL7, I've looked at what my role is and I know what level 1 requires and I'm familiar with that and that's something I can do. What if I'm interested in imaging analyst level 2? Now I can hover right from here and say, okay, what are some of the things that I additionally would need to know? And then I can take stock to say, well, how many of these things do I actually know already? And how many of the things I may need to study for or get training for or get some form of education? So this allows me to basically create a career map and identify the gaps that I may have. This is also very helpful for a hiring manager who may have an individual who wants to grow into a role that may or may not be available yet, but they want to start working on their career. This would create a very helpful map for that conversation between the two and come up with then a skill set development plan, job shadowing, reading, taking courses, attending sim, those type of things. So as you can see here, it shows through all the different domains, the 2 different skill sets. There's a couple of different ways to view this. This is right now is in the overview level. I can also click on the detailed view, and this gives you additional detail in terms of breaking out more of a description of each of the roles, and then more details if you wanted to do a more open comparison, a more detailed walkthrough of these. So these are just 2 different ways of looking at the same data. Again, just like the last tab, we have the copy all content. How is this helpful? It really helps in the generative AI, which I'm going to show you shortly, in terms of be able to take this, extract all this content out, and then hand that over, or if you want to do it manually, go through, ask it to develop, given the difference between these 2 roles, how would I go about developing a career learning plan? And then it can come back. Now, whether it gets it 100% right or not, it's at least a starting point for you to start to understand what are some of the ways I might need to be able to learn to get from a level 1 to a level 2 in HL7 and PACS and EMR risk, etc. So given that, I can copy that. And again, this allows you to compare any 2. So you might start off and say, okay, I'm a PACS administrator, quite skilled. But my real role that I want to get into is in management. So it might be imaging application manager or informatics director. When I compare these, and you'll see there's a lot of things that the FSIIM has that the informatics director doesn't need to be at the same level in the technical. But if you look at the leadership and management, there's a lot of things you need to be able to do at a senior level, like at a director. So this would allow me to start to understand kind of the business and leadership and human resources skills I would need to make that kind of leap from a technical to a business role. So last couple of tabs, this is the Gen AI prompts. And what this allows you to do, there's a number of kind of cards here. Think of these like templates. So if we look at the role skill gap analysis, I can just copy this text and then I look for these brackets here and it says I'm currently in the role of, and then I would add the title and I want to transition to this role. And then I would put the output from the compare roles tab. For example, the imaging analyst 1 and the imaging analyst 2. I put all that in together into my preferred AI tool or multiple tools and see what it comes back with. So you can see these are just basic, just helpful starting points like a prompt. Another good one here is a role-based quiz question generator. Let's say you were hiring someone for a PAX admin level 1. You could put in the job description of all the different knowledge and skill sets, pop that in there, and then get back a bunch of skill testing questions to assess that person's knowledge within each of those areas, or generated a starting job description generator, that kind of thing. So these are some prompts, and we can add to these as well. We've got some filters at the top here if you just want to filter to those. We can imagine or envision adding to these as people come up with ideas. A couple of quick other points. We have a glossary here. These are some of the terms used within the tool itself, and we'll add to this as we add to the content. There's also a great reference. I won't launch it here, but CIIM has a informatics terms page. It's a great resource to look at and find out terms that you may want to learn or study or look up specifically. And finally, we have a contact us, and this helps us. You can send it in and go to Mohannad and myself, and it allows us, if you had, for example, a feature request that you wanted to add to the tool function, if you disagreed with, maybe we put something as a level 2 and you said, look, I do this job and that's a level 1 or that's a level 3, then we're open to that feedback. And for that, we've included this ability to optionally say which role, just so it's easier for us. You don't have to type as much to point that out. Or you may say, here's a role that we have at our institution that's not included here. Would you be willing to add that to the matrix? And we can take a look at that and see how much we know about it and add that in. So we're excited to make this available to everybody. And our intent is to maintain it as we learn and as we get feedback from the community. And as the roles evolve and skill sets and changes happen in the hierarchy and roles within imaging informatics, and we can add additional resources as well for learning. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. Again, it's iipcareers.com. It's free to use, and there's a ton of easy ways to copy the content out and paste it into your favorite Gen AI or paste it into documents or simply use to have those important career discussions within your institution.
Thank you very much. This is terrific. I find a lot of times you have organizations that may not know the exact role, but they know what they're trying to fill. And so there's a nice way of looking at what are the skills that I need and how to best describe this for my organization. Thank you to both of you. This is going to be a very interesting tool to see how it evolves over the next few years. We'll have this posted shortly and we'll make sure that it's out to the community.
If I could add one more thing. So one of the nice advantages about this is that we are no longer using spreadsheets to version all the different updates to this, right? When updates are created, they're automatically going to show up on this site. So everything that Don showed you, from domains to skills to levels, is fully editable. So let's say, for example, in the future, we want to add something to the technical domain, I don't know, HL7 fire knowledge as a skill. That would just be an easy thing that we could do. So it just opens up a lot of doors to disseminate this knowledge in a very easy to access, real-time updates type of way.
Very user-friendly, beautiful admin interface, which I won't bore everyone with, but it allows us to make edits very easily and maintain this in content as we get feedback from the community.
And I love that you closed out with a little bash on Excel one last time, Mohannad. Thanks. Anyway,
I have to.
We'll get this out, and thanks again for taking the time to showcase this.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mohannad.
Yeah, the magic of the scene. Interoperability, the dream machine. .com, HL7, IHE, and Snap. We're building the future, never looking back.